This lesson is all about Unity and FMOD integration. I've got this project up in Unity right now. You can see I'm working here in Unity version 2019.4.12. This is a good, stable version of Unity right now in mid-January, year 2021. This lesson itself comes from this beginner lesson that you can find at Unity's website. I've got a link in the description below. And this is a really simple lesson as far as Unity is concerned, but it provides a really stable foundation for doing a lot of the basic FMOD and Unity integration. So it provides a really useful kind of playground for creating sounds in FMOD, bringing them into a Unity project, and then getting those sounds to play in response to lots of different in-game interactions that you build when you do this tutorial. So having this tutorial finished and ready to go in Unity is a prerequisite for this lesson. The link is in the description below, and right there, yeah, you can see that they put this little warning about having Unity 2018.4, but I've been working in the 2019.4 version, and that's been completely fine. So I don't think there's any reason why anyone else should have any problems with it. It seems to work just fine. You download the package, import it into a new project, and when it's all said and done, it looks like this in Unity. When you play the game, you've got this little car driving down there. You can steer with WASD or arrow keys, bump into these crates, drive off the edge of the world. Really basic with the kinds of interactions that are there, but again, it's a really great kind of playground for different sorts of sound interactions in a very simple game world. To get this project ready to go with FMOD, there's just a couple things that I think are helpful to do. The first one is to make some adjustments on the camera. One of the things about this that I think is a little awkward is when you're driving it around, if you turn like this and decide you want to go back in the direction where you came, the car is still there, but it's just kind of hard to see where you're going when you're driving. So one thing that I thought made the process a little easier is to just simply take the camera that's here in Unity and then drag it and drop it so that it becomes, whoops, I don't want to do it like that. I'm just going to make it a child instance of this, of the vehicle itself. And when you do that, yeah, the camera changes and things actually maybe even get only slightly better. And that's because in this tutorial, there's actually this script called follow player. And easiest thing is to just deselect that box and disable that script. And I think you'll find that with the camera as a child object inside of the vehicle and not using that script, suddenly our camera is just right behind the car, and it makes seeing where we're going and driving a whole lot easier. Now, as a matter of personal preference or taste, you may find that you want to put the camera in a slightly different location so that the view looks better to you or just feels more natural, but this just makes it easier to move the car around this little strip of road, and will make it easier to bump into these objects and drive past them and do lots of things that make hearing the sounds that we put into this Unity template a whole lot easier to hear. Speaking of which, another thing that we need to do, you can see I still have the camera selected here, and by default, every Unity project has the Unity audio listener attached to the main camera. We don't need that. At one level, you could just simply deselect it like we did for this follow player script, but we really don't need it at all. So it's also possible to just click on that little menu right there and say that you want to remove the component. That's Unity's default audio listener, and because this project is destined to have FMOD audio integrated into it, we don't need the default listener that Unity provides, so we can just simply get rid of that and move on. And once those few things are done, we're ready to go, and we can start to do some work in FMOD. So the first thing that you may need to do is just simply download FMOD. fmod.com/download is the URL. Again, a link in the description below. If you need the software itself, once you get to that page, you'll see FMOD Studio Suite is listed right there at the top. And in this tutorial, I'm using version 2.1.5. At the time that I'm recording this, there's actually a slightly newer version that is also Unity verified, but I did all of my testing and whatnot with 2.1.5, so I'm just going to stick with that for this lesson. I've already downloaded it, so I don't need to do that, but you'll download it, install it, and you should be up and running and ready to go. And then once you've done that, the next thing that we need is the Unity integration package. And this is a collection of files and folders with everything that's needed in order for FMOD and Unity to talk to each other. So again, with attention to the version that we're using, we want to make sure that we grab the version of the integration that matches the version of the software that we're using. So 2.1.5 is what I'm planning to use. That's what I've selected right there. I'm going to click on download, choose a place where I want to put this. Where do I want to put this? I want to put this in the folder where I've got this project. And I'll drop it in there and we'll use it a bit later. So here's FMOD. I've created a new project. I've given it a name and just a little bit of file management. Here's the folder where I have everything saved. I have that Unity project in its own folder. Here's the integration package that I just downloaded, and I put that inside the same folder. And then here is the folder for the FMOD project that's open behind this Finder window right now. And the reason why I put everything in a single parent folder like this is to just keep everything together, but also thinking about potential collaboration with other members of a game design team or version control that you might need to do. Having your FMOD project in one folder and then the Unity project in another folder would allow you to have two parallel development streams in a code repository, and you can have a branch for one and a branch for the other, and those can be merged when needed, but then they can also be worked on separately when needed, and that can make collaboration with other people easier if that's the sort of thing that you need to do. And I also think it's just good if you're working on your own. Having everything in the same place means that it's easier to back up and transfer to a hard drive or cloud storage. But here we are with a new project, and I will keep this pretty simple with just a few sound effects and one piece of music. Not going to do too much with this. I really just want this lesson to show everyone how to integrate FMOD sounds and music into Unity and get some basic events up and running. So I will import some sounds. You can choose File, Import Assets, or Shift-Control-I, Shift-Command-I, and find your audio wherever you may have it saved on your hard drive. I've got a crate sound effect. I have a driving loop, that's some music, and then I also have this mountain ambience, and those are the three sounds that I will put into this. Oh, I don't want driving loop tails, I want driving loop. So those are the three I'm going to grab. Click open, and those are now imported here in FMOD. And just a little bit of background about those sound effects. Let me switch over to Adobe Audition. Let's see, this is the session that I used to create the crate sound effect. I have two different sounds in here. This one plays first. I want to solo that. That's kind of a dull wooden thud. And then I have this little metallic sound. Apparently it's the sound of a hammer that's falling onto a wood floor. But together, We get a little bit of rattle, a little bit of metallic impact, a good hollow thud, which makes a lot of sense for the hollow crates that you crash into when you drive your truck in this tutorial. I also have... Oh, and these have been exported as a single WAV file, so that's the final sound effect as a mono WAV file. Then I also have the mountain ambience. It sounds like this. Oh, actually, this is the original. I made a mix down. Sounds like this. And one of the important features about this sound is that it will loop without any disruptions or artifacts. I call that a seamless loop. It means that, well, when it plays from the end like this, it will turn on loop here, loop back to the beginning, and you won't notice any sort of skip or pop or disruption in the playback. It just loops without any artifacts whatsoever. Creating a sound like that is not terribly difficult, and I have another tutorial that I created that will show you how to do that. If you'd like to learn how to make a seamless loop, you can find that in the description below as well. As a quick preview, I actually have the session open right here, so let me just undo. Back to the beginning. Okay, so this is where we started with a smaller chunk of audio that I edited out of that larger source file. I identified this point as a place to cut the loop, and that's an important point because if I zoom in all the way, you can see that there's a zero crossing where the waveform crosses that red zero line, which you can see a little better if I zoom out more. Yeah, that red line that runs down the middle of the waveform is 0 decibels, and that point where the playback needle is sitting right now, there's a zero crossing in both the left and right channels of the stereo file. So the process of the seamless loop is to find that zero crossing, to cut the audio file in half or cut it at that point. Then you rearrange the tracks. You take what was the end of the file and bring it to the beginning. You take what was the beginning of the file and slide it to the end. Then drag one over the other in Audition. If you're working in Logic or Pro Tools or some other software, the process of creating a crossfade might be a little bit different. Once you have that crossfade, you'll listen to it and make sure that the transition from there to there is smooth. And once you know that's in good shape, you're ready to export this and create a stereo WAV file. You'll have something like this. And based on the way that that edit is made, when it loops from this end to this end, you shouldn't hear any sort of artifact. And provided that the crossfade is smooth, you also don't get any sort of weird artifact or shift or disruptive change of timbre when you play across the file, because the crossfade should make those edits they shouldn't be evident at all. So that's a quick background on creating some of these sounds. Excuse me. Once we've done that, we're back here in FMOD, and we can start to create some events. So let's start with the most basic. That's probably the crate sound effect. I'll just right-click on that sound here in the audio bin. And if for some reason your audio bin isn't visible after you imported the sounds, you can go up here to Window and choose Audio Bin. It will open it up. Sounds are there. And I can right-click and choose Create Event. I want this to be a 2D timeline. Lots of other options here, obviously, but because this is a basic lesson, I'm just going to use a simple 2D sound and not use any positional audio qualities on this. I'll do that in some later lessons. 2D timeline is great for starters, keeps things simple. So we click on Create, and we have our event. I want to rename this, give it a name that's a little bit more simple. I think just crate-hit makes a whole lot of sense. The event is here, the WAV file is there, and play this back. Whoops, there we go. And we hear the sound effect. And for a single shot, simple sound effect in FMOD, this is really all we need to do. And of course, there's a lot more that can be done in terms of shaping the sound with effects, using positional audio plugins to help put it in the space and allow it to sound like it's located somewhere in the 3D world. But again, this is just a simple sound effect, so we'll keep that as is. I'll open up my audio bin again, and let's create another event with the mountain ambience. Again, we're going to make all of these really basic, so I'll just put it into a 2D timeline and repeat that process and give this a slightly more simple name. And we'll create a third event. It's 2D timeline once again. And now that those events are there, there's a little bit of editing that we'll do with these last two. As you can see from the name of this WAV file, this is called Driving Loop. It's just about 4 bars of music. Nothing terribly interesting, just gives us a bit of a mood to play while we're driving this truck down the road. But it's meant to be a loop, and we need to let FMOD know that when this audio event plays, it should repeat. And that's a really easy thing to do. Just simply right-click on the WAV file here in the FMOD event and choose New Loop Region. FMOD will automatically assign a loop region that matches the duration of the audio file, which means that when we play this back, it loops and repeats exactly like we saw with our mountain ambience when we were auditioning that earlier. We'll do the same thing with the mountain ambience. We want this one to loop as well because it was edited to do that. So right-click on the WAV file in the FMOD event, choose New Loop Region, and it will respond in exactly the same way. Realize I haven't saved my project yet, so quickly save the project just to be safe. And now that all of those sounds are here in FMOD, I can go through and do the last few steps to get these ready to go into a Unity project. A few steps involved in here. The first of which is you have to assign each event to a bank. And the easiest way to do this is to just simply assign that sound to the master bank. I'm going to go ahead and do that for all of these. You just right-click on the event, choose Assign to Bank, and then find Master Bank when you're browsing all the available banks, which there will just be the master unless you've created some custom banks. And there is a time when you may want to have different banks in your game depending upon what sounds you want to load at different times, but having everything in a master bank is a quick and efficient way to start, especially with a simple project like this. You can see there's a Banks tab here, and if we open up the contents of the master bank, you can see that all of those belong to the master bank now. And once that is in place, I'll save the project again, and then choose File, Build. The process of building produces some additional assets that Unity will access when it integrates this FMOD Studio session that we're making with the game that we created in the tutorial earlier. And with all this in place, that's our next step. All right, with our assets in place in FMOD, we're now ready to do the integration. The first step is to add that FMOD Unity integration package that we downloaded from the FMOD site. That is a simple process. Start here at Unity's Assets menu, choose Import Package, Custom Package, and then browse to the location where you saved that FMOD Studio integration. The name lists the version, and again, that's something that's really important here. 2.1.5 is the version of FMOD Studio that I used to create these events, so I want to use the same version of the integration package when I do this. Click Open. It takes Unity a while to see what's in the package. After it's done that, it gives you this window with the entire contents of that integration package. What's in here may be of interest to you, but it's not necessary to go through and check anything. Just see there's a lot of stuff that we're going to bring in, and once this is ready to go, you click import, and it'll take Unity a while to copy everything from the integration package that we just downloaded into this Unity project. And when that happens, you'll see a couple things change here in Unity. We have a slightly different collection of files and folders here in the Project tab. Here in Plugins, we can see there's now an FMOD folder, and that has all of the contents of the integration package that we just introduced. You'll also see that that adds an FMOD menu. And this FMOD menu allows you to access documentation, information about the integration. So if there was ever a question, for instance, about version, you can get that information right there. It also allows you to go to settings, and you can actually edit the settings. And this is well, not the first, I guess this is the second, but in some ways the most important step, in that you can see here in the settings, FMOD's not really ready to go. We have a warning because we haven't selected the project that we want to associate with this Unity game. We need to do that. So we see that we have a couple different options. The default project works best for what we're doing right now, but Unity wants to know the path to that project. So we can click on this Browse button, and then this takes us to the location of our Unity project itself. And again, this is another reason why it's helpful to save these in the same folder, because our FMOD Studio project is right there. And I can just select that project and say Open. And then Unity is able to find that resource. It can also locate all of the additional information that FMOD produced when we went through the process of building that project. And it gives us access now to the contents of the event browser. The event browser looks like this, and this just lets us know what in FMOD is available to us now that we're working in Unity. And if I open up this Events tab, we can see the name of our events that we created earlier. Play them back, and we've got more or less exactly what we would expect, the events that we created in FMOD earlier. And it's probably more a matter of personal preference than anything else, but I like to put this tab right here along with project. Sometimes the management of these windows can get a little bit wonky because this wants to have enough room for the information that's down here, and that can sometimes make reading what's in here a little awkward, so you'll have to navigate that, and that's really more a matter of personal preference than anything else. But it can be helpful to have these things here because then you have quick access to all of your events, and that makes it easier to attach them to game objects over here in the inspector when we're ready to do that. You may remember earlier when we were doing some making some edits to the main camera, we actually removed an audio listener, the Unity default audio listener, from the main camera. Well, we still need an audio listener, but because we're working with FMOD, we need the FMOD specific listener. And that is easy to add. We just, well, make sure this is clear. I've selected main camera here in the hierarchy. Shows up over here in this inspector. Click on Add Component, and you can see there's a category there for FMOD Studio. And right there, the FMOD Studio listener is what we need. That is also a crucial step in this process. Without that listener, we won't be able to preview or integrate any FMOD audio whatsoever. That's an essential component in this whole process. It's probably a good idea to save the project. We had a warning earlier because we didn't have a project path, but that's in good shape now, so I should be able to clear those, play the game, and no problems whatsoever. Another thing that you'll notice that's kind of helpful is we've got this little heads-up display with some details about Unity about FMOD and what's going on under the hood, so to speak. That's another thing that happens with the integration package in place and the studio listener attached to a game object. You'll be able to monitor that as you play your audio. And now that that's in place, we can start to attach some of these sounds that we created. So I'm going to select this game object called environment. I think this is just an empty game object that holds a handful of other things. But I'm going to add a component here, choose FMOD Studio again, and I'm going to select the event emitter. This is one of the most basic ways to play a sound inside of Unity. If we go from top to bottom here, what event do we want to happen in order for this sound to play? Well, let's have it play right when this object starts. This is where we're going to attach the environmental loop. That's a sound that we want to be here the entire time, so it makes sense for that to play when the object starts. You can see that there's a bunch of stop events, but we really don't need a stop event for this. We want this to play for as long as the game is running and we're in this environment, so I can leave that as none for now. But we also need an event. Which one do we want to play at this point? So I'll grab Mountain Ambience over here, drag it, drop it in the inspector, and you can see that it includes that as our event. There's some additional things that are available to us now, but we don't have parameters for this, so none of that stuff is really applicable to this sound, but it will be in future lessons, that's for sure. But with that sound attached, we now should be able to play the game and hear that sound in the environment. Yep, it's there. A whole lot louder than I thought it would be. Probably a whole lot louder than we need it to be in the game, but that's okay. We can take care of mixing later on and get these levels to be balanced out. Let's go ahead and add another sound. Let's add the music. I think, I don't know, I think about the music as if it were playing, well, it doesn't sound like it's playing on the radio of this truck, but I think of it as something that's part of the player's experience. The player drives the truck, so I think about it being tied to the vehicle here. But in the interest of trying to keep things compartmentalized in our project, I'm going to go ahead and create another empty game object and attach the music to it, just so that we have a specific place where that music can exist in our hierarchy of this game. So you can right-click on the vehicle in the hierarchy, choose Create Empty, and then over here in the Spectre, give it a name. I'm going to give it the name Music. And we'll repeat the process that we did when we added the environmental sound. I'll click Add Component. You can browse to FMOD Studio, or if you just want to type in the search there, it will automatically filter. Typing FMOD gives you only the FMOD components, and we can choose the event emitter once again. We add that event emitter, and then go through the process that we did earlier. Play event. Well, we need it to play when the object starts. We don't need it to stop until the game stops, so that's fine when listed as none. We'll grab the event driving loop and drag it and drop it over there. And so at this point, with both the environmental audio and the music in place, I should be able to play this game and hear both of those elements. Yeah, we have them both there. Pretty loud, a little crazy perhaps, but both things are definitely there. So if you are at a point where you wanted to mix these, you could start to do that now, but we have that collision sound effect, and I think it probably makes more sense to do the mixing once we've got all of these elements in here and we've got a sense of where everything is at, rather than just 2 of the 3 things that are going to be in this game. So let's hold off on doing any adjustments until we've got that last sound effect in here. Let's see. We're going to attach the crate impact sound to the crate. And I've got all these different obstacles in there. Probably would have made sense to give them all names, that call them all crate 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, but this is what they say right now. Not the end of the world. We can do this in a way that allows us to kind of perform some of the repetitive tasks all at the same time. So shift click and make a selection on all of those things. We're going to have this sound play when the truck that we're driving crashes into it. And in order to do that, we need to add a component that will help make that event something that FMOD can capture. So click on Add Component, and you can see I closed some of these things up just to make this all a little bit more legible. You can do that same thing if it's helpful for you. Then click Add Component, and in the search, you can type the word box, and you'll see Box Collider shows up. We want to add a box collider. And by doing that, with all of these selected, the box collider should be applied to all of these crates. We also want to toggle on is trigger, so that is now true, which means that these box colliders will be registered as a trigger in our game world. And if we go through and look at those individually, we can see, yeah, that holds true. So that's exactly what we wanted, which is great. Then, if you need to, make sure that all of these are selected once again, and we can search for FMOD. And here, we are going to add parameter trigger. That's right. Sorry, spacing out for a second. And basically what this is going to do is say that when a collision event happens and a trigger event is noticed in the game, it will register and play the sound that we need. But there's a couple other things that we need to do here. First and foremost, we need to select vehicle. I forgot about this earlier. And choose, here in the inspector, there's a section called tags at the top. We want to make our vehicle, we want to give it the player tag. Then, when we select all of these, and we have our FMOD Studio parameter, oh yeah, this isn't going to allow, it won't allow us to do this as a group, which is a little bit of a bummer. So this is one that we're going to have to do one by one, although we can do some copy paste to make it a little easier. But we've got our studio parameter trigger, so I'm going to grab create hit and studio event emitter. Oh, that's right. I've got to put the event emitter on this to begin with. Oops, forgot about that. Put the event emitter, and yes, we want this to play on trigger enter. Oh, right. Okay, it's all here. Sorry, I'm spacing out, forgetting or confusing this process with the other one. We can use this one alone. We don't need this studio parameter trigger at all. Sorry about that. Just go ahead and clear that one out. We can work just with this studio event emitter. play event when trigger happens. We don't need a stop event. But then collision tag, we were talking about that earlier. We can see that default player trigger shows up. So that's where we can select the player trigger. And then the sound itself, our create hit event, goes right there. That makes a whole lot more sense. So now we've got our studio event emitter. The sound will play when a trigger happens. Which trigger are we listening for? We're listening for the player trigger, and that is the sound. Create hit is the sound that will play when that happens. This is attached to obstacle, which I'm pretty sure if we look at that over here, yeah, that's our first crate. So we can just test that out right now. Play the game. And our music is currently so loud we can't hear any of that stuff. So let's just go ahead and disable the music here in this empty object. I think the environment will probably be okay. Yeah, there we go. Okay. So, yeah, we hit the crate and we get the sound, but then we hit a crate that doesn't have that object. Yeah, we hit crate 2, no sound attached, we don't hear anything. Hit the first crate with the sound attached, and we get the sound. So that's performing exactly as we would expect it to. Now I want to try something again. So I accidentally put that parameter trigger on all of those. We don't want that, so let's get rid of that. I just made a group selection around those 4, cleared that out. Let's see if we can apply this whole thing. So I apply an event emitter to the whole thing. That's all good and well, but yeah, it doesn't give me any of those individual properties. So let's get rid of that, and we'll do this another way. And the other way is to just simply take the studio event emitter that we attached to our first obstacle, right click on that component, choose copy, and then go here and right click in the inspector on one of the other components and choose let's see, where do we, if I paste right here, yeah, there we go. There we can choose that option to paste component as new, and it's going to throw a copy of that studio event emitter there with all of the parameters that we assigned earlier. So it's going to respond to a trigger event with the game object that has the player trigger attached to it, and create hit is the event that will play when all of those things happen. So we'll go through and do this with the others. I was trying to put it on to the shader down here. That didn't work. So when you do the copy and paste, make sure you're on one of the components up here in the inspector, and then you can right click and choose paste component as new, and it will put that studio emitter in there with all of the correct components. Excellent. And now that we have all of those in place, I'll save this and test it out. And let's go knock into all 5 crates and make sure that that event plays as expected for each of the crates that's in the environment. All right, there's the first one. Second one. I don't want to hit these too hard and send them flying off of the road, but I guess it wouldn't be the end of the world if I did that. All right, yeah, we've got 5. So that is working exactly as we need it to. Fantastic. Last thing for us to do right now is to deal with the mix. As you know, we had some music in here. It was really loud. So I'll go back to that music object and turn the mix on. Or I'm sorry, turn the emitter that's playing the mix back on. Yeah, everything's playing, but it's pretty cacophonous. So at this point, we could go back to FMOD and tweak the level of these events and get them right, and then bring it back to the game. And, how's the sound? Is it right? Oh, we need to tweak it again. But that back and forth is really a huge time suck. Fortunately, there's something that makes that process a whole lot easier, and it's called Live Update. If you look at the bottom of your FMOD Studio window, you'll see this little button that by default is going to say Live Update Off. But if you click on that, it will open this window. And while you have an option to enter an address manually, it's just easiest to go with localhost because the Unity project that we're running is on this same computer. So we connect over localhost to our Unity project. Click the connect button. Oh, that's right. And it's not happy to do this right now because the Unity game isn't running. So I actually have to let this game start. And then once that game is running, I can click connect to localhost, and then you'll see that Live Update is on. And what that means is that I can come to the driving loop, find our master channel right here, and I can bring that volume down. And I'll go here to the mountain ambience, click on the master channel, and I'll bring that volume down. And once I've got it to the point where both of those things coexist but without overwhelming, I can switch back to Unity, and because my game is running, I can drive, and I can hear. Nice. And that allows me to hear how all of this is working. And if something is too loud or needs further adjustment, well, you can just switch back to FMOD. I can come to my crates and say, oh, those crate hits are a little too loud. I want to back them down just a little bit. You could say, well, I think the driving loop is also still too loud, so I'm going to back that down a bit. And then once it feels like everything is in the right place and balanced out in a way that sounds good to you, whoops, well, don't drive off the world. Too late now, but I'm happy with this mix. And so I can stop playing the game here in Unity, switch back to FMOD Studio, and all of these changes that I made are going to remain in place. So I was happiest with my music at minus 25 dB. My ambience balanced out well at minus 18 dB, and I backed the crate down a bit to minus 2.5 dB. That's good. I'm happy with that. And so now that those changes are in place, to make this a permanent feature, all I need to do is just save this project, file save, and then build it again, file build. That will update all of the raw material that Unity depends upon. And now that I'm back in Unity, FMOD, you can see it says that the cache was updated. So while I made those changes in FMOD, Unity was able to notice that those changes needed, that the changes happened. It brought in the new data, and when I play the game, we have the mix levels that we expected. And I believe, let me double check this, yeah. The other thing that's great is that that live update feature that we were using earlier will remain on by default. And live update is just fantastic because if we played the game some more and we realized, no, these levels just aren't quite right for me, I really want to have something louder or softer or different in any way, we can just simply switch back to FMOD, make that adjustment as needed. Although, I really kind of like it where it was. And then, let's double click and put this minus 25. There we go. Save it. build it again. And then when we return to Unity, yeah, we got an error because I tried to do that while it was running. Doesn't like that, but I should be okay now. Yeah, the cache is updated now, and I should be able to run this without any problems whatsoever. So there you have it. Pretty simple, pretty quick, basic integration with FMOD and Unity. This is the beginning of the process. There's definitely a lot more to come.